wonderful people all over this country. She is a beautiful
Guyana will become the next Dubai, and we, the citizens of Guyana, are super excited to benefit from our homeland the same way the citizens of Dubai benefit from theirs.
This is what life is like for citizens from the Emirate of Dubai. When you are born, your parents pay nothing. Your delivery and checkups for the next 9 months are all free. Then you grow up and you go to school. Local school in Dubai is free! And so are universities, because Dubai will pay for you to get a degree.
I studied at Zayed University and New York University, both for free.
Who's gonna pay for that?
The government.
Then you get married. If you can't afford the wedding, you get $20,000 to throw a wedding. And after marriage, every local Dubai family gets this: free land! Did you get free land?
Yes.
Did you get free land?
Yes.
Did you get free land?
Sure, yes.
And if you cannot afford the home, then you get a grant to build it for free.
I also can't afford building a house. I can get a 0 interest loan on housing.
Zero?
0.
If you need to go to the hospitals are free. And if you need surgery that's not available here, they will fly you to another country to get treatment for free. When you become a senior citizen, you get discounts, many discounts. And if you live alone and can't afford it, Dubai will even send a caretaker to look after you for free. And when you die, well, in Dubai, that's also free. Your funeral will be taken care of, and Dubai will build a full tent with air conditioning within 5 hours of your death next to your home, so your friends can come and say goodbye to you.
Guyana will become the next Dubai.
with wonderful people all over this country. She is a beautiful Guyana.
A very good evening to all our viewers in Globespan 24/7 as we meet on this Wednesday night program. I know you might be surprised to see me on the Wednesday night program, but because we started a discussion on the oil and gas on Monday program, I was asked today to let us continue discussion, especially as Guyana, currently the leaders from Guyana, the Caribbean, and around the world, are meeting on the oil and gas conference in Guyana. So it's only fitting that we continue the discussion. So we want to thank Nohar Singh for making this platform available, and of course Devin Bisu, our technical specialist tonight. And of course to you also, our viewers, for joining in, and we hope I know we'll have a really great discussion tonight on this oil and gas. To help us tonight are three outstanding sons of Guyana, no stranger to us. Alfred Bolai, a retired teacher and lecturer at the University of Guyana, in the science field as well. Darsh and Khusial is an engineer in Canada, and of course Mike Persaud, a retired school teacher here in New York City. So gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charles.
All right, tonight what I want to do, gentlemen, is break down today's discussion in four broad categories. First, we want to talk about transparency, not only of the contract signed, but transparency of what's going on now within the oil and gas industry and what you expect to see in the future. And then we want to touch on our share of oil revenue to see how, and we keep talking about this, but it seems to me that our Guyanese family, our fellow Guyanese, seems either despondent or they don't care what is going on in our country. What I do know is that if the PPP was in opposition now, the PEP's supporters have been very vocal on this contract. Now they're in government, it seems as though everything in the contract is fine. What the president said yesterday is appalling, and we will discuss that as well. If the PNC was still in office, they would have thought the contract was good as well. And now they're in opposition. I'm surprised that they're not speaking out as loud as they should. The only logical conclusion I think most people, reasonable people, can come to is that our politicians have been compromised. If they're not, then why are we not speaking out? So to help us through tonight, as I said, these three wonderful Guyanese. So Mr. Bolai, I want to start with you. Transparency. When you, what has been your experience as you go towards, in these public meetings that they're holding? Is it a sham meeting? Is it meaningful? Are we getting all the information we ask with the answers that we present to them? What is going on?
I don't think they're meaningful any longer. They are just going through the motions to do things on a surface level. What the public, to fulfill some idea that the public has that they're going through something transparent. When the public actually shows up, like I did Friday before last, they are denied answers. I mean, the time I wrote a letter in today's paper describing my experiences at the last one. I was there trying to get my question answered, but the moderators simply first of all, they packed the audience with a lot of school children. Now, some were very intelligent and they were quite awake and were alert to what is going on. But others were sort of chattering among themselves, and obviously they were there just to make up space and time. So he deliberately waited until they asked questions. And then he guillotined the meeting so that we didn't have any more time to ask. A lot of, I would say about 4 or 5 members of the public were there with genuine questions, and they were not satisfied. There's more. I mean, 2 years ago, I asked questions that are still not answered. I asked for things like temperatures, pressures, daily production, how much is flared, how much is vented. But there's a complete blackout in the information. The EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, which is supposed to be the body looking out for the people of Guyana, they are obviously in cahoots with the oil companies. I went in, I was invited to visit the EPA in November 2021, and I looked around. I said, I'm not here to bring you down, I am here to help. And we seem to be getting on well. Unfortunately, we seem to be no longer on speaking terms. In January 2022, about a year ago, I was asking the question about the results of monitoring. Are you, the EPA, monitoring the oil companies' operations in a timely manner so that we can know what is going on for our own safety and the safety of our Caribbean neighbors? They said we're getting it in place. And in the papers, there was a big picture with some of the EPA members standing in front of monitors. Now, I was shown the room where the monitors would be. I was happy to see the monitors. Now, this year, 2023, 1 year later, They are now thinking of a management plan for the monitoring. So, what have we been doing all those years, the whole year? Nothing. We still don't know what is going on. One question I had for the EPA Friday before last at the Whiptail, the 6th Development Project Whiptail scoping meeting. Only one question. That question was, what was yesterday's oil production? So we got to know the oil production. There's no point knowing the analysis. You got to know the analysis too. But if we don't know how much is produced, if there's a spill, how will we even assess how much has gone? In the 1990s, but I'm a chemical engineer, among other things, and Omai had a spill, a small spill, with cyanide in it. So at the public meeting afterwards, I got up and asked, did you have any flow meters? No answer. Now, an operation like that's supposed to have flow meters. You're supposed to know how much is moving. I mean, at what rate. If something spills, you simply go to the last reading of the flow meter and find out how much is spilled. They didn't even know how much was spilled. Lo and behold, they did nothing, and there was a bigger spill, and they still didn't know. Now we have Exxon outside there producing oil, and they can't tell me yesterday's production. If something spilled, they can say, well, we don't know how much spilled. Is that a satisfactory answer?
And as we had Mr. Persaud, Anand Persaud Monday night, and he was saying we can't blame the oil companies or the gold companies. We got to blame the government. We got to blame the government of Guyana. Where are the controls that they're supposed to put in place for that to happen? Darsh, you want to continue that discussion?
Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit here again about the transparency, etc. So what Alfred was talking about is those sessions for the 5th oil project, Uraru, and the 6th, which is Whiptail. Last year, they had sessions for the 4th oil project, Yellowtail. And there were many questions asked. They were written up in the newspapers, etc. There were Zoom sessions, right, where people ask these questions. We have at least 5 letters on our oggn.org website where various folks submitted many questions. As far as we know, the majority of those questions were never answered, right? And they went ahead and they approved Yellowtail. Now, what we notice with the current sessions they're having for this 5th and 6th oil projects, they seem to have removed the Zoom sessions. And from last year with Yellowtail, what was happening was there were many questions coming over the Zoom because you had Guyanese experts with various backgrounds being able to call in and ask really good questions, which, as I said, went unanswered. So, you know, to me, one of the things about, you know, what Alfred is talking about here, they're packing these sessions with students, etc., and maybe you only have 3 or 4 people from the public. By eliminating the Zoom, they're actually significantly reducing, you know, really good questions, really important questions from the Guyanese public. So that is concerning. Another point here I want to make, I'll sort of switch a little bit, but still on this topic of transparency, is, you know, I think your guest this past Monday, Anand Persaud, the editor of Starbucks, he talked about the $460 million pre-contract cost, right? And Chris Ram had pointed out that that was overstated by $92 million using the oil company's own financial statements, okay? Now, the audit was started in late 2019 by IHS Markit, okay? And as pointed out by your guest on Monday, that audit is still not being completed, etc. And that's for the $460 million pre-contract costs. What does not make sense to me is, okay, if I give the analogy of someone, you're hiring someone to, to build your house, etc. So first you said, okay, go build a fence around my house. And you have serious questions about, the cost that person has told you. Then why would you go and say build the house? But if you look at what's being happening with the government, irrespective of the cost for serious questions around the pre-contract costs, they keep going ahead and approving these, projects like Yellowtail, Payara. Now they're looking at Whiptail and Uraro, and those are billions and billions, right? Payara, I think it's like 9 billion. Yellowtail is 10 billion. So that makes no sense to me. Why since that audit started late 2019, why you can't release that? What is so secretive? And if there's a big concern, why are you approving these additional projects?
And that's a good point, and maybe Mike to come in. But remember, Lisa 1 was originally, the cost was originally 4.4 billion. And after, John Mangal and others spoke out, the cost went down to 3.7 and then eventually settled at 3.5 billion, a 20% inflated price that they give to Guyana. And I mentioned on Monday as well, which that's why I said at the beginning, I don't think the Guyanese people really care of what's going on. We have given a pre-contract cost of $460 million US. But yet, when Exxon brought in Hess and CNOOC, we don't know how much they receive from these two oil companies. I'm sure they receive $40–50 billion each. Because think of it this way, I think the Stabroek Block, and they know it, it has about maybe 20 billion barrels, maybe more. Think of 20 billion barrels at $50 a barrel. That's $1 trillion US in revenue. And you think they will bring in Hess and CNOOC for zero? I mean, it's unbelievable what President Granger and Trotman did when they signed that contract. And President Ali, when he was campaigning, says everything will be on the table. Yet now, yesterday, President Ali is saying that renegotiation is off the table. So it's only the people of Guyana will have to come out and take a stand. But it appears as though the people of Guyana, they don't care a damn if every day is Sunday. And that's the problem we have.
So I just want to make one point here. You brought up the Lisa 1 capital cost, which started out at 4.4 billion. And then after Dr. Jan Mangal and a few others pointed out in the press issues, it reduced by 700 million US, then eventually landed at 3.5 billion. Now, that Lisa 1 was the first project. Lisa 2 was the second project. Payara was the third. If you look on a per barrel basis, so Lisa 1, the break-even was $35 a barrel. Lisa 2 was $25 a barrel, okay, break-even. Now, you would say, okay, they've learned lessons from what they did in Lisa 1, economies of scale, because Lisa 2 is a bigger project. Lisa 1 was approved for 120,000 barrels. Lisa 2, 200. You would say, okay, per barrel, the capital cost should be lower. But if you do the math, the capital cost for Lisa 1 was about $7.80 US per barrel. For Lisa 2, it's $10 a barrel. For Payara, it's almost $15 a barrel, right? So that makes no sense. You're having, you can say, okay, Lisa 1 was the first project. You got some things wrong. You learned some stuff. But Lisa 2 and Payara are bigger projects. You would expect, the cost per barrel, the capital cost per barrel is lowered. So if you do the analysis, you would see it sort of comes back to that pre-contract cost. The 92 million over 460 million is about, 20% overstatement. And if you look at what happened with Lisa 1, again, it's around that range of 25% overstatement. So you could probably think, Lisa 2 and Payara, they're overstated. And those are billions and billions of US, which is meaningful to a country like Guyana that has a budget about, 2 or 3 billion US a year.
Mike, I want to bring you in with the share of oil revenue. Exxon put up some billboards across Guyana saying that we are getting 50% profit from our oil. And the vice president seemed to also say that on Glenlal program. Glenlal has been, you got to give Glenlal credit. He has been a superb mastermind behind the oil and gas industry to wake up Guyanese, but again, Guyanese are sleeping. Give us your view on this, what Exxon did.
Okay, hello everyone. I think the billboards should be taken down because it's spreading a very misleading message, if not totally false. I had a look at the billboard picture this afternoon, and it says Guyana is getting 52% profit. I repeat that, quote unquote, 52% profit. The math is false. I'll tell you why. If you have a whole pie, think of a pie, the whole, or think of it as 100 barrels of oil. In every 100 barrels, 75 are taken out for cost recovery. You have 25 remaining. And so you split the 25 half and half, and you give the government of Guyana half, oil companies half. And you say that's 50%, but it's really 50% of 25 barrels. Fine. Government of Guyana gets 50% of the profit. 25 barrels are deemed the profit. And then Alistair Routledge 2 days ago said the oil companies are paying 2% out of their share of the profits, but that 2% is based on the whole 100 barrels. So it's really 2 barrels out of every 100 for royalty to the government of Guyana. So let me say it this way. 2% of 100 barrels is 2 barrels. 50% of 25 barrels is 12.5 barrels. But you can't add 50% and 2% and come out with a total of 52% because the base is different. 2% of 100, the base is 100. 50% of 25 barrels, the base is really 25. And that's, you have done violence to the math by adding 50% of 25 barrels to 2% of the whole. So let this message go out to all Guyanese and to Exxon, and to tell them plainly that this is false math, it's misleading. Why are they doing it? Because they want to brainwash the Guyanese people to convince them somehow that you're getting a good deal. Hey, you're getting 52% of the profit. Why not say it this way? You're getting 14.5 barrels out of every 100 barrels produced. Let Guyanese think of that. Let Guyanese contemplate that. 14.5 barrels out of every 100 barrels produced. If they're happy with that, then I will stop doing agitating for renegotiation.
And that, Mike, is 14.5%, not 52. So that's why it amazed me that the vice president went on the Glenlal show and saying the Guyanese are getting 52% as well. So I don't understand. I mean, they're accusing the PNC. Of course, the PNC math is crazy. They don't know math, but I think the PEP is just as bad as the PNC.
Yes.
How can you say 14.5% is also equal to 52%, Alfred?
It's crazy. You can't.
You're a science teacher. Mike is a teacher here in New York.
You would feel you get 0. It's just like it. So the poor is the minimum majority.
It's the majority of 65.
Yeah.
That if I may come in here, Charles, that billboard announcing to Guyanese people that they are getting 52% of the profit. I've had someone do an informal survey on 3 different days, different groups of people, and ask them to look at the board and ask and what they think, what they believe, how they interpret that 52% profit. And they all think they're getting 52 barrels out of every 100 barrels produced. Now, that's a perception of the average Guyanese man or woman. And if that is the belief, then no wonder they would not, there would be no need for them to protest, no need for them to agitate for renegotiation, because they believe that we are getting 52 barrels out of every 100. But it's really 14.5 barrels out of every 100. We should tell the Guyanese the truth. The government of Guyana, that's an outrage on that billboard. And the government of Guyana is totally silent in this. That's Exxon coming into my country and spreading a false message to the Guyanese people. And you, the government of Guyana, saying nothing about it? You mean this outrageous false math doesn't bother you? Well, I tell you.
So I would add to what Mike said and something Charles referenced. So a few months ago, the VP appeared with Glenn Law on Kaicho Radio, and the VP said, "Oh, we'll get more than 50% of revenues." That's totally false. If you have a 50-50 profit sharing and you have to refund them for costs, you always have some operational costs. And we talked about, earlier, Lisa 1, the break even was $35. There is no way, in a 50-50 where you have to refund them for a cost, you're getting more than 50%. So that is stunning, like that simple math, even our government doesn't understand. And, we're talking about 14.5%. When Global Witness did its report in early 2020, it referenced an IMF report that surveyed about 67 oil regimes around the world. The average revenue take was between 65 and 85%. And here we're getting, 14.5%. And we have the government even confused, thinking they're getting at least 50%. Right? It is, to me, it is stunning.
And I really don't know, Mr. Bolai, what else can we do? What else can your organization do to tell the Guyanese people that they've been screwed, and the government seems to turn a blind eye? And again, I have to repeat, they will only do that, in my opinion, if they have been compromised by the oil companies. And it appears as though both the government and the opposition have been compromised. So they're not speaking out on behalf of the Guyanese people. As Mike rightly said, if you get 50% of zero, it is still zero. You get 100% of zero, it's still zero. So we are getting 50% of 25%. And as Darsh just mentioned, even if we had ring fencing with Lisa 1, the production cost, the breaking point is $32 per barrel. If the oil price is $50 a barrel, that's $15 per barrel we will get, and we'll share that 50-50. So how much is that? So we will get of the 65, we'll get 32.5%, yes. But 32.5% of what? So we're not even 50. So when I talk about this 50%, and Mike brought up a very good point that you ask Guyanese, the average Guyanese, what does that billboard says? Oh, they say we're getting 52% of the oil revenue because they think profit is revenue. And that's our problem. And the politicians seem to be enjoying it, and everybody's happy going on. Now, talking about that, yes, sorry, Alfred, go on.
Charles, if I come in there, I just want to anticipate what people might rebut to what I just said, and to try to preempt something. Using the word profit, what Alistair Routledge is doing to the 2% profit and getting away with it is the Guyanese government should tell them, look, we don't use this thing about profit anymore. We don't use profit. Tell them what percentage of the whole they are getting. Because When you remove 75% of cost recovery and you are using the 25 barrels as profit and you split that, that comes out to 12.5 barrels Guyanese share, profit share, and you call it 50%. All right, so 12.5 barrels equal 50%. Let me give you another example here. Suppose 90% was taken out for cost recovery and 10 barrels remain for profit share. Government of Guyana would get 5 barrels. Hey, that 5 barrels is really technically 50% profit. Profit is just 10 barrels, 90% barrels gone for cost recovery. So here we have a setup, 50% of profit, 12.5 barrels. In the other example, when 90% is deemed cost recovery, 5 barrels is 50%. So the 50% profit, use that term, is misleading. Don't let the government of Guyana say, hey, Exxon, you got to take this billboard down because it's a false. We don't want you to use profit. You're brainwashing. You're fooling the people. Tell them.
Mike,
Put on the billboard. Hold on. The government of Guyana must demand that Exxon replace that billboard and put the information that the Guyanese people can understand. Put there that they're getting 14, nominally, 14.5 barrels out of every 100.
Okay, but you know that will not happen. The government of Guyana will never do that. Mr. Bolai, you know, I said there was more than one way to skin a cat. Can we get permission to put up a billboard next to Exxon billboard and put the facts that Mike just talked about? Can we get that permission?
I doubt it. I mean, when I was in Transparency Institute, we tried, we used to have billboards up, but the lease expired. So we tried putting up new billboards about, you know, anti-corruption billboards and so forth. They always saying, yes, but no, it's the NDCs or the regional body authorities have to give permission. Whereas when you go to them, they say, yes, yes, this is very good. We're certainly going to do it. They never do it.
No. Can we do it? Can we get permission?
That's what I'm saying. You have to get permission from the owners of the land where you're going to put the billboard. So the only way you can do it if you get a friendly private property. Somebody who owns the property and you put the billboard up so that people passing on the road could see.
And you're telling me that there's no Guyanese who live in a prominent area where traffic flows will not give permission to put a billboard in their yard for that purpose?
No, I can't say that. But we have not been able to find people. That's all I can say.
Okay, Guyanese, there's a call now. There's a call going out to all Guyanese.
Yes.
If you live in a high traffic area, please send a note to Mr. Bolai is in Guyana. Send a note to Globespan, and we will set up a billboard in your yard telling the people of Guyana exactly what we're getting from this oil. Now, Darsh, the contract allows for renegotiation. We know President Granger changed the contract. We know the EPA apparently every couple months, they're changing some part of the contract. How is this sanctity of contract that the government is touting contradict what is happening on the ground with the EPA that so ever often they're changing the contract?
Yeah, so if we look at the LISA 1, the EPA approval for LISA 1, it seems to have been changed in 2021 and 2022. And that change is both approved by the government of Guyana, the head of the EPA representing the government of Guyana, and the head of Exxon Guyana.
I think Darsh, I think we have one. Devin, do we have one of such approval that we can show our audience? Go on, Darsh.
Yeah. So if you're having both parties agreeing to a change, right? So we have a change in 2001. So the original approval, I think, happened in 2017 or so for Lisa 1. Lisa 1 started production in end of 2019. There was a change, and you can see it's signed off by both the person representing government of Guyana and the head of SO Guyana. And then again, it's changed in 2022. So if we're having all these changes and both parties are agreeing, aren't you changing the terms of that EPA agreement? So the contract, the Starbuck block contract says, you know, if both parties agree, there can be changes, right? So why is the government, it's willing to do these EPA changes for Lisa 1, Lisa 2, but it goes out there and it's parroting this narrative from Exxon about sanctity of contract. And if I take a more broader view, forget about Guyana, a little broader view, you know, the North American Free Trade Agreement, which was between Canada, Mexico, and US, that was formed in the early 1990s. A few years ago, that was renegotiated, right? To be fair for both parties, for all three parties. The Paris Agreement, you know, the US backed out of that. The Iran nuclear agreement that got changed, etc. So I don't understand all these big, you know, agreements that are unfair, etc. People think they're unfair. They're able to renegotiate or have better terms for them. And here we have the example also in Guyana of the EPA coming and changing with Exxon, changing the terms of Lisa 1 and Lisa 2 permits multiple times, but yet our government is talking about sanctity of contract. How can you be talking about sanctity of contract when almost 48% of Guyanese are living on $5.50 a day? And that figure is increased from when oil production started at the end of 2019. So our people are getting worse off, and it's not fair, right? So one party, so Exxon, the oil companies last year, 2020, on the American Stock Exchange, S&P 500, out of the top three performing stocks are Hess and Exxon. They're among the top three. So they're raking in, I think last year Exxon had $55 billion US in profit, right? So the oil companies are benefiting tremendously from our wealth, right? And our people are living, almost majority of people are living on $5.50 a day, and yet our government is going around and saying sanctity of contract. But as you said, Charles, even President Granger, there was a modification to the Starbuck contract, and I think that modification was to clarify that the royalty was not, the royalty did not come out of cost oil, right? So those types of things contradict when the government is going around and saying, you know, sanctity of contract, sanctity of contract.
This is a,
Yeah, Mike.
if I can come in here, this is a tremendously important aspect of this whole oil contract, oil business. Whether a contract can be renegotiated or not. I just want to say a couple of things. The party during the campaign, the ruling party during the campaign before it came into government, it condemned the contract. Some of their leaders of the party said this is the worst damn contract in the world. And the presidential candidate Ali said everything is on the table to be renegotiated. Mr. Jagdeo said the same thing. And once it took office, they changed their minds. Well, let us say that maybe Exxon put some pressure on them, maybe Exxon threatened them, maybe Exxon offered them some kind of deal that we don't know about, and so they backed off. Well, the sensible thing to do in a case like that you stay quiet. Be silent. Don't go out of your way to defend this contract. But that's what Jack Day was. This is the strangest thing, strangest behavior I have come to see in all of modern politics about the behavior of a leader. It makes no sense to defend the. It makes no sense to say sanctity every time Jagdeo opens his mouth. Sanctity, sanctity. In fact, he had a guy from the DPI. I forget a guy who his byline was used, and what I choose to call a white paper, in which Mr. Jagdeo said why the contract cannot be renegotiated. He said sanctity. The other one, he said investor confidence. And the third, he said, oh, it was done by the previous government. Go to the previous government. Let them renegotiate. Well, that is supposed to be a piece of asinine thing to come out from the president's mouth. Go to the previous government. You're in power now. You have to renegotiate. That's your responsibility. That's what you're owed, to get the best deal for your country. And he is running away from his responsibilities. Up to recently, I think a week ago, he said, you left us a shitty contract. That's what he said when a reporter asked him. This is unbecoming behavior. This is shameful behavior of any leader anywhere in democratic societies. The contract specifically said it can be renegotiated, providing both parties agree. What their supporters are saying is, hey, you can't get Exxon to agree. So why not say it cannot be renegotiated? Why not take this position it cannot be? Well, is that how government operates? In all my life, I read political literature. Even in the movement for independence of Guyana, it's always like a tug of war, a healthy tension, a back and forth debate, pressure. The decolonization leaders all over the world, and in Guyana, Mr. Burnham and Mr. Jagan, they were always tugging and fighting and marching and demanding independence and so on. It's about a pressure. This government, what you're supposed to do is to use your leverages that come from the fact that you own the resource. Hey, you got to meet me halfway. You got to talk with me. You got to come back to the table. And they can tell Exxon, so, you know, you have a license to operate one well in the Starbuck block, or two wells, Lisa 1, Lisa 2. But if you don't, you want to play hardball with me, you don't want to negotiate with me, then I can't approve another well or another oil field. As simple as that. See how they react. Isn't that normal pressure of any government? And this government, I don't know whether it's the same as Ali's government or Mr. Jagdev's government, they are reneging on their promise. But apart from reneging, their behavior on this whole thing is shameful.
Yeah.
But Darsh, before you answer, do you think that the oil company is laughing at Guyana, saying how shallow our politicians are?
Well, I want to say something to what Mike was saying just now. If you read today's Starbuck News, there is a question there's the Guyana Energy Conference going on this week, and there's a question posed to Mr. Ali about renegotiation. And Mr. Ali's response is, renegotiation would mean the stopping of oil production. That is a stunning answer. If I'm going to renegotiate, I don't stop all production. So that makes me very concerned. Do they even understand the basics? They have, Lisa 1 and Lisa 2, they're pumping oil. Payara is approved. Yellowtail is approved. If you want to do renegotiation, let's say, with the fifth oil project, Urara, and the sixth one, Whiptail, let's renegotiate on those and get some better terms like ring fencing, etc. I don't understand how renegotiation means the stopping of all oil production, right?
That particular remark from President Ali is so outrageous. It invites disrespect to Mr. Ali himself. I don't know if he realizes it. to say it's either renegotiation or you stopping production. I mean, this thing was so outrageous. It's laughable. It's unbecoming of a president to make that remark at a conference like that. I really think, even if Mr. Ali, where are his advisors? Who wrote that speech? Who counseled him what to say or not? Shouldn't the advisors prevent him from making a fool of himself to go to that conference and make a statement like that? To me, that is like a horror show. It's terrible. And I notice another thing: they are not talking too much about sanctity anymore. Now they are peddling the line put out by, I'll say, Routledge, Guyana's Exxon president. Routledge said, "Look, we invested $30 billion here, and if you want to renegotiate, you would destroy, quote unquote, destroy investor confidence in your country." Now that is a piece of horse down he's pulling on this country. This country has what, 800,000 people, a small country. He thinks this country is inhabited by a bunch of fools. Many Guyanese, Dr. Kenrick Hunt, we had Professor Kemraj. We have many qualified people in academia all over the world who would laugh at these things. We know what affects investor confidence. And I'm going to tell you something from the business press that is repeated over and over. They say that money is like water. If there's a crack somewhere, the water will seep through the crack. And wherever there's an opportunity for invest anywhere in the world, money will flow there. And this oil business is very profitable. You want to know how profitable it is right now? Well, the big oil giants made $200 billion last year. Exxon alone made $56 billion. It caused President Biden in the White House to comment about Exxon. Hey, you're making all this outrageous profit, and you're not spending back some of it to expand production and so on. UK government has imposed, and I believe Germany.
Mike, we'll get into that. We'll get into the taxes later on. But what I want to bring Mr. Bolai in. Mr. Bolai, what both Darsh and Mike is mentioning, and even with the conference, to show how, I don't know what happened to our protocol officers or politicians, whoever. The presidential podium had the seat of the president. After he's finished speaking, others went into that podium to address the audience with the presidential seal there. I've never seen that in no country in the world, but I've got, again, that's happening in Guyana. What Mike said and Darsh mentioned, the president making those statements, is that treasonous to the people of Guyana? I mean, it's a very difficult thing to say, but when a president make those statements, isn't that a treason?
I would like to comment.
I would put it that way.
Technically,
I wanted to make.
You're going to Bolai. Okay, go ahead.
I wanted to make the point that they are happy to make such statements. You see, this is a logical fallacy of a false conclusion. It's a straw man. We as teachers and academics, we know all those people you made, Professor Kemraj, Dr. Hunt, all these people you mentioned, they know the ordinary Guyanese are completely unaware of what is meant by logical fallacy. They are going to swallow it. And I cannot believe, I mean, I'm sure the president knows you're not going to stop oil production. You don't have to stop oil production. But he is using it to placate his supporters. It's a good sound bite because he has encouraged the academics and so forth to leave the country and get better paid elsewhere. So he's happy to get his demographics right.
Yeah, one comment here. Charles raised a word here just now. If this is treasonable behavior.
Well, it's treason to the state, Mike, not to the state. It's our resource.
Yeah. I got it. You're approaching the behavior of this government to be perceived as collaborating, selling out your resources without getting fair value to an oil giant, and to display yourself in this manner that you don't want to stand up and demand, use your leverage and demand them come back to renegotiate this horrible contract. It's approaching treason. It's treasonous. It's not treason, but it's approaching that, to sell out, to be seen by your people as selling out your resources without demanding fair value, and to use all these manner of excuses, sanctity of contract, now investor confidence, we would destroy, and all of those things are false. I can't say, I can't find another word without going to treason. It is not treason technically, but it's a horrible, despicable behavior for leaders of a government not to be afraid. I want to come later on to talk about why they might be afraid of an oil giant, and go through some political history on that. But it's terrible behavior.
All right.
I'll end this topic there.
I want to put it this way: that if you go and threaten the president, like this guy went to in the offices in the State House, that's treasonous, I think.
Yeah.
So when you do that against authorities, it's treason. But when you sell out your country, the PNC did it. The PNC signed this contract. We are not accusing the PEP of this contract. The PNC signed it. Now the PEP is in power. The president said in campaigning that everything will be on the table for negotiation. He has now backtracked on that. Is that lying? Is that treasonous? We talk about it, but that's different. Let's talk about the taxes now. Mike, you mentioned that, and of course we know that the United Nations, of all places, have proposed that the world have a minimum tax of 15%, signed by 136 countries. And I think Guyana is signatory to that too. When will we get our 15% tax from Exxon?
Okay. Charles, this contract has waived corporate income tax. Exxon and the other oil companies, the other partnering.
No, Mike, this is a different proposal. Forget about the contract. The world is calling 15% minimum tax. Are we going to get the 15% from Exxon production?
Charles, that question was asked of Mr. Jagdeo, and Mr. Jagdeo answered it this way: we have a signed contract, and he dismissed it. The fact of the matter is we need to have renegotiation so that the fiscal terms can be renegotiated, and including the tax, we must ask Exxon. Exxon must pay what Professor Ganga Ramdas has called profits tax, or the same thing is called corporate income tax.
Okay.
Corporations, U.S. corporations operating all over the world pay taxes on their profits made in Ireland, made in South Africa, and so forth.
Yeah, okay.
They pay that to the host country, but when they file their their corporate income tax returned to the U.S. government, and and it works out to X amount of dollars owed to the U.S. government. They get a credit for the amount they pay in that host country. What is happening right now is, in this case, Exxon pays no corporate income tax, and they make a lot of profit. But the government of Guyana does not want to renegotiate this contract. So it seems to me that Exxon is going to, for the life of the contract, which might be 30 years, they will pay no income tax. Now, other thing about this world agreement, 15% tax, that thing came about because governments around the world were offering to entice foreign corporations to come in and operate in my country, provide employment and so on, and pay some tax on my. They were varying it 10% to attract. Others were charging 15%. And so capital was being reallocated differently. And so it made sense for all these governments to come together and say, hey, let's stop this thing. You're competing unfairly. And so the U.S. government brought them all together, and they found an agreement. Let us not let them compete against each other's country. Let us charge them a fixed. Let's agree on a fixed thing, 15%.
All right, Mike. All right.
And I will say yes. If this contract can be renegotiated, we can agree. Government of Guyana, that's reasonable. Let Exxon pay 15%.
Mr. Bolai, did Exxon have a contract with the U.S. government for the production of oil here in the U.S.? Yet the U.S. is also going after them for the bumper profit they made in addition to the contract that they have. So this talk about this contract we have in Guyana with no taxes, that's what we have. But why can't we go after the 15%?
There's no reason why we can't do that. Other countries are doing it. The British started doing it. They call it the windfall tax. And I think it was, I think they wanted 25%. I'm not quite sure. But after the British decided to bring in this windfall tax, it started to get popular around the world. And it settled down to this 15%. But we're getting nothing. In fact, we are paying the taxes for it. We are supposed to be paying taxes for Exxon and companies.
Yeah, but Darsh, even the EU, they're getting 1.3 billion in windfall profit taxes.
Yeah, so if you look at the fourth quarter Exxon financials, you will see it appears in there that the EU charged Exxon 1.3 billion in windfall taxes. That's windfall on top of regular taxes, right? So Exxon is even paying the EU, which it doesn't have. Like Exxon is selling out of Africa, Exxon is selling out of Europe. They're focusing on Guyana, right? 1/3 of their reserves are in Guyana. Most of the offshore activity is now in that Brazil, Suriname, Guyana region, and we're not charging any taxes. Yet it's our pensioners, it's our workers that build the roads, that build the airports. So when the Exxon employees fly into Guyana, right, they come to our airport that's built with our taxes, that's built with those many people surviving on $5.50 a day. They go through the customs officers, that's paid by our taxes. They take the steel for the pipelines, etc., on our roads, damaging up our roads. That was built with our taxes. So we're getting 14.5% of revenue, and then maybe we'll even have to use those revenues to rebuild a road and whatever things, etc. To me, it's astounding that they're paying 0% taxes. And coming back to this 136 countries, one of the reasons for this 15% minimum tax is because a lot of these big multinational corporations, they were getting away, they would go and structure their headquarters in like Ireland or something like this and not paying much taxes. So that is why 136 countries got together and say, hey, this is totally unfair. These companies, need to pay some minimum type of taxes, which is the 15% taxes. And then also President Biden had said, you know, Exxon, you need to start paying your taxes. Right.
Right, because and not only that, President Biden also mentioned that what the company is doing, they're taking these windfall profits and they're buying back their shares. So he's saying, and I agree with President Biden, let us tax those buyback, you know, whatever you pay for your shares, you're going to pay tax on them back. Because what they're doing, once you buy back your shares, your earnings per share just automatically skyrocket. And because your EPS skyrocket, guess what? Your price goes up in the market because investors look at that. So it's, you know, they're using our, well, not all 55 billion that they got was Guyana. Guyana is only a small part of it now. But in the next couple of years, Guyana will be a substantial part of their profit.
But how these companies are valued on the stock exchange, it's looking at their oil reserves, right? Their future oil reserves, which is really their future cash coming in. And Guyana is now, I think, at least 1/3 of Exxon's, Exxon's reserve. And as I said a few minutes back, you know, Exxon is selling out of Africa, Exxon is selling out of Europe, and they're focusing. There are two areas they're focusing on. One is Guyana, and one is in America, in the Texas area, right?
Well, someone suggested that they're coming to Guyana for the headquarters because Guyana would have been their really big bonanza. And again, as Mr. Anand Persaud and others have mentioned, we can't blame Exxon. Exxon got a PACU, and Exxon does what you do in a PACU.
And to that point, Charles, I mean, Exxon, all these corporations, their number one priority is the shareholders, right? Yeah. It's how much you're earning for the shareholders. Nothing else matter. You know, they don't really care about Guyana's environment. They don't. I mean, if they have a better deal somewhere, they will sell out of Guyana and go. It's just about the money. Nothing else really matters.
But don't forget, their bonus is also based on their bottom line. So think of the country Guyana, the country president of Guyana. He must have got a couple of $1 billion in bonus. You know, these guys are getting handsomely paid, and the rest of the country is living in $5.50 a day.
So Charles, when you're talking about the buybacks, etc., right? They get paid in options, in stock options. So one way to inflate their payoff is to buy back their stock, which would basically make their options, like the salary many of these multinationals, not only Exxon, etc., the salaries of these executives, when you look at it, they look tiny, but it's not where they make the majority of their money. They make the majority of their money from stock options or restricted stock units. And how you come away with a big windfall in that is to buy back your stock. And if you reduce your the number of shares outstanding, essentially that will naturally raise your share price.
Well, your earnings per share. And let me put on my accounting cap here. You see, when company buy back their shares, and Darsh is hitting it right on the head there, they call treasury stock. So they keep it in, you know, on hold. They don't receive dividend in those stocks, but some of those stocks is exactly what you said, to give bonus to company executive and so on. So they're given stocks that are really high price, and it's really, you know, it's a wheel within a wheel that the guys at the top enjoy all the good fruits, and the hanging fruits that is rotten and falling. That is what it counts.
I will say one other point. If you look back at the history, like 10, 15 years ago, one of the Exxon CEOs, his retirement package was like $100 million US, right? And, you know, what did he do so fantastic? Did he create did he create an electrical car? Did he create the COVID vaccine, etc.? No, all these guys are doing is just going and sucking up the oil from the ground. Like, why do they retire? Just a retirement package was like $100 million, which was a record at the time, right?
It's incredible. Okay, guys, let's talk about this oil spill now. We have half an hour more in our program, less than half an hour. Now, we know that OGGN wrote a letter to Prime Minister Rowley. It was publicized in this Kaichur News. Darsh, you want to talk about that? And let's talk about what we see with this oil spill, if any oil spill happens.
Okay, yeah. So So let's look back at the 2010 oil spill, because that was the most recent one in the Gulf of Mexico. So we did some investigation, and the Journal of Accounting and Finance, the total cost of that oil spill is projected to be 145 billion US. Okay. Now, if you think about Guyana, it runs on $2 or $3 billion a year. The money up to last summer that it got from oil was about 1.2 billion US. So 145 billion, if we have anything like the Gulf of Mexico oil spill, that would, bankrupt Guyana easily, right? Now, there, even in today's Starbuck paper, and even in August the 6th, 2022, Exxon Guyana, Esso Guyana, I'll refer to the August the 6th, 2022, the communication manager for Esso Guyana, she had a letter in the paper. It was also, Starbuck News, and I think it was in Kaichor News, etc. And they are claiming the production limits in that letter, her August the 6th, 2022 letter, the production rates for the Liza facilities are maintained within safe operating limits at all times. Okay. Now, if you read today's Starbuck, you will see there's another Exxon spokesperson talking about, the safety, etc. Now, Liza 1 is the first project that's been producing since December 2019. Liza 2 came on board early last year. But let's refer specifically to Liza 1. So to get approvals for the EPA permits, etc., they had to go through a bunch of things. One is an environmental impact assessment. And on page 28 of that impact assessment, it says Liza 1 is designed for a rate of 100,000 barrels of oil per day, with a potential to safely operate at sustained peaks of approximately 120 barrels per day. Okay, now you have, even today they're talking about, and you can see it on the government website too, Liza 1 is pumping 150,000 barrels per day. So if your design rate is 100,000, you're pumping at 150,000, right? You didn't go and you didn't update the EIA, or you didn't update the EPA permits, etc. So let me ask you this: if you have a plane and you said, hey, my capacity is 100,000 pounds or something like this, and I'm going to put 150,000 pounds, it's very likely that plane won't fly and would crash, right? So I don't understand how, Esso Guyana is in the press saying, oh, we're within safe operating limits. They were never approved for 150,000 barrels per day for Liza 1, right? And not only are they exceeding the maximum, and I'll read again, 120,000 was for sustained peaks. But as I said, you can go to the government website, you can see, the Esso and the Hess executives, etc., boasting about, oh, we're approaching 150,000 barrels per day for Liza 1, and Liza 2, they're all also exceeding that amount. So when they're in the press saying, oh, we're operating within safe limits, what are they talking about? Because that was not in the agreement, right? And if we look at we had talked earlier that, okay, there's Liza 1, which is the first project, Liza 2, the second project, Payara, the third, Yellowtail, the fourth. Then right now they're going through the approvals of the fifth and the sixth, Uara and Whiptail. That will be 6 projects, and that's about 158 wells. So each project has multiple wells, right? If let's just say there's a 1% chance of failure in any of those wells, right? For 158 wells over a life of 20, 30 years, that's almost 80% there's going to be a spill, right? And what is very concerning is we do not have the proper coverage, right, for the oil spill. So if Exxon is out there saying, hey, we're we're operating in within safe limits. Everything we're doing is safe and approved and all of that. Well, there is something I want to bring up here, which is right now in the EPA permits, there is a requirement for full liability coverage, right? So Esso Guyana and Hess Guyana and CNOW Guyana, those are shell companies. They don't have enough assets to cover an oil spill. So in the EPA agreements, the LISA 1 and LISA 2, there is written in those documents, there is an agreement to say that the parent company, which is Exxon US, Hess US, etc., CNOC China, right? What you need to do is give a parent company guarantee. Okay? Now, they have not, those agreements, I think LISA 1 EPA permits was signed probably in 2017. They have still not given those parent company agreements. So if there is an oil spill, we would be bankrupt because the shell companies don't have enough to cover an oil spill. And I want to touch back on something where, again, the government, I think, is not fully understanding, the situation. Because when the VP was on the Glenn Lawal show a few months ago, he said, oh, if there's an oil spill, we will seize the assets of Esso Guyana. Now, the problem is, Charles, you're an accountant, right? So assets subtract liabilities is the net worth. That's what you can seize, right? And if you look at the Exxon financials, it's almost nothing. That is why in the EPA permits, there is a need put in there for the parent company guarantee. And one of the things we have a petition calling for, I don't know if Devin can ping it into the Facebook and YouTube chat, is, hey, just honor the agreement that was signed, the EPA agreements that was signed for full company, full liability coverage.
Well, Alfred, what Darsh just said there, when the Vice President said we will seal the asset of Esso Guyana, that asset is paid for by Khusial. So it is our asset, so you're seizing your own asset to pay for the spill. And we had told a story in Guyana, of course all of us know the story, what all our parents or grandparents tell us, what you can't see in broad daylight, don't take a jog lamp to try to find it in the night. Exxon is refusing to pay very little cost for anything that they're accused of, they're guilty of. They're refusing to pay those small costs. Are they going to pay $100 billion to clean up a spill? Or Guyana going to be mortgaged for the rest of our life to pay for it?
That's right. Now, whenever I attend those public meetings, they say we are ExxonMobil. We always take care of our spills. We are safe operators. And they say it in a nice manner that sort of to win over people. But there's nothing to back it up. There's no parent company guarantee. As Dr. Adams always says, if you really mean that, well, then put it in writing. They never do.
Mike, any comment on the oil spill, if there is one?
Yeah, well, the government, through their parliamentarians, pushed back and misrepresented the meaning of full liability coverage in the parliament. They said if you require the oil companies to take out insurance, the cost for those premiums would be excessively high, and you would put a lot of financial pressure on the companies. Well, Dr. Adams had explained that, signing a letter to guarantee full liability coverage doesn't cost a penny. However, in the event of a spill, only then you will have to worry about paying for some of the damages. And the government of Guyana has a sense of security, namely, if you don't pay, I will go to court and I will show this this letter, this full liability coverage letter on Exxon's letterhead. And maybe the court will have to give us, settle this matter by requiring you to pay for some of the damages. But the government, the ruling party government, PPP, they just scotched the whole thing. They threw out the whole thing. They would not even want to require Exxon and the partnering companies to sign such a letter. I can't find words to describe a government behaving like that. This government is so anxious to ingratiate itself with the oil company that they would rather, what is the word they're using? They cut your face, cut your nose to spoil your own face. Right. You wouldn't want guarantee to protect your country and the neighboring Caribbean countries that might suffer damages from an oil spill. It's hard to fathom this government.
Well, in an accounting perspective, if a company signs a guarantee, they'll have to put it in their balance sheet as a note to the accounts. Now, will they have to do an allowance in their financial statement? It depends. If it's probable cause or it's not likely and so on, there are different terminology used in the accounting profession that determine whether it goes into the financial accounting statement or a note to the financial statement. And I guess Exxon maybe don't want to do that because of those reasons where the shareholder might think, oh, there's a potential liability of $100 billion should there be an oil spill. But again, as all of us are agreeing tonight, and you, the audience, if an oil spill happens, and as Darsh mentioned, there's a high probability with all the wells that we have in each one of the different blocks, different areas, whether Lisa 1, Lisa 2, Euro, wherever, the probability is high that there can be an oil spill.
Yeah.
Now,
so Charles, can I, so I quoted something that was said by Esso Guyana's representative on August the 6th. I want to quote something that was said again today by Exxon, right, with regard to safety, etc. So it's reported in today's Starbucks News. And it said the company's media relations advisor, which I have to assume is Esso Guyana, Mr. Isles, told the Starbucks News that the increase was safe. And this is where they're boasting they even want to increase the limits of the daily production limits of Lisa 1 and Lisa 2 even more than they have right now. And what Mr. Isles says, safety is a core value of ExxonMobil operations. We do not compromise safety standards to improve profits. That includes production ramp up, right? So how do you explain you were approved? The design capacity was 100,000. You know, sustained peaks was 120,000. You have been pumping at least 150,000 barrels on Lisa 1 for many, many months. Right? How can safety be a core value of your operation? And if you were so confident in the safety, why aren't you signing a parent company guarantee? Right? This is laughable.
Mr. Bolai, any comment?
Yes, you know, this I find it's regrettable that the ordinary Guyanese, the rank and file, they are not troubled by all of these goings on. They are in bliss, or in the bliss in their in surviving. They sort of trust the government, and this is a nice place for governments to be. There are still people. My late mother always wanted me to get a government job, and if I didn't get a government job, I'm not really making the grade. And there are many like her still around who think the ambition of the children is to get a government job. So this kind of mentality is what perpetuates these falsities. The government can get away with a lot of things because they have a core groups that believe in them. That is life.
Yeah, Mike.
I want to use Alfred's point as a jump off to go to try to explain, to try to figure out why the Guyanese population is like that. We have had the political sociology of this country. We have some troubled politics. We have a very divided country. It has been a struggle for power between two racial groups, the Africans and the Indians, and it has been going on for almost 60 years. I have done a lot of work on the streets of Liberty Avenue in New York City. And a lot of PPP supporters come up to me and said, "Why are you doing this? Why are you calling for renegotiation?" And I would explain to them how many billions of dollars we are losing, and that a contract can be renegotiated and so on. And one guy, well, several of them said, "Mike, you're trying to set up this government. You're trying to set up this government so that they would go after Exxon to demand renegotiation, and then they would lose power." He's telling me that plain. Many of the bloggers in Fabric News have written the same thing. We are trying to set up this government to pressure them, force them to demand renegotiation. And the moment they do that, Exxon will kick them out of power. So the perception is Exxon has that power to determine the outcome of elections in Guyana. It's a pervasive feeling, perception all over Guyana. The Guyanese people believe that. And so, considering the division of the population, it becomes a Black Indian struggle, even over the question of renegotiation. Indians would not want to renegotiate because you are putting my government's, you're forcing my government to put at risk its hold and power. And why do the African side do not want to support a renegotiation? And here comes, we have been told that the leader of the PNC visited the United States. He had a meeting with Exxon people, maybe at their headquarters. And when he went back to Guyana, he said, "You know what? Renegotiation is not in my vocabulary." This man, Mr. Norton, actually sat down at his table in his house or office and wrote a letter to the press. I couldn't believe that, but it happened. He wrote a letter to the press and said, "Wait, I didn't use that word. That word renegotiation is not in my..." And I said, "What the hell happened here? How is this leader behaving like that way?" Well, we build theories to explain things that we can't see. I think that he must have had talks with the leaders of Exxon at their headquarters, and something was offered, something was promised, some pact or agreement must have been entered into, and they must have said, "Listen, if that ruling party screws up and they lose power, you're next. We will help you get into power." Maybe, I don't know. I'm trying to find answers. And the ruling party does not want, they feel that if they demand renegotiation, Exxon will kick them out. They have that perception that all giants they go all over the world, and that power they have. And that might be the reason to explain why the government is behaving that way. But one thing I would caution this government, I want to say through this program, and I hope the word will get out. Mr. Jagdeo, Mr. Ali, don't defend this contract. Just be quiet. You're afraid to demand renegotiation. Don't go out. Don't issue that crazy white paper that Mr. Jagdeo said why we cannot renegotiation sanctity of contract, because that's a lot of baloney. Sanctity doesn't apply here. Contracts all over the world are being litigated every day, and if the elements of the contract are not satisfied, that contract is set aside. This contract, we know how this contract came into being. A man named Mr. Trotman, minister, said publicly, openly, many times. He said I was instructed to sign the contract. What did it mean? The contract was not read. It was negotiated. Somebody above him, I don't know who, told him, sign the contract. So that's how this contract came into being. Nothing was renegotiated. If that contract goes to court, I am 90% certain the court will set it aside. But even me, as a member of OGGN, which is we are calling for renegotiation, we don't want the contract to be set aside. We want litigation. We never call for litigation. We don't want to go to court. We believe the matter we can get a better deal by simply pressuring Exxon, use your leverages. Hey, you're not going to get the permit to operate another well. And they would agree to come back to the table. And you know what? The windfall, this Ukraine war, the average price for 3 years or 4 years was $65. That average world price has gone to a new threshold. It's $85, $90. It may even go higher. And that windfall gain of about $20, we should negotiate for that. Take a cue from the U.S. government, President Biden. Take a cue from the German government. Take a cue from the UK government and demand a cut in the windfall profits.
What I don't quite understand, gentlemen, is that why is the government afraid to renegotiate? Who votes in the election in Guyana? The people of Guyana. So if you renegotiate a contract and you get a bigger pie for the people, and they get a better way of living, a standard of living, a quality of living, who are you going to vote for? They will vote for you who get it. And I hope that Glenlal court matter, the court hopefully will rule in his favor. If he does, I think a lot of people in Guyana will look to Glenlal as a very important player in the political arena, because he's single-handedly taking on Exxon when the government and the opposition is just, taking a back seat, as you said. Gentlemen, we only got 4 minutes more to go. Anything in closing, Mr. Alfred?
I wish that we could know that the EPA would behave itself and give us the data, do their jobs. I mean, I think of all of those people who are employed at the EPA. Don't they have consciences? Are they so subjugated to their salaries that they can't think? I mean, I'm appealing through this program, if anybody can hear, to think of, let us think of our country, think beyond ourselves. If the country gets better, everything gets better. This is my wish for the country, for all the population. Let us work together for a better Guyana, and we've got to recognize the things that are bad and tell our leaders, not be afraid. Thank you.
Well said, Mr. Bolai. Mike, 1 minute, anything in closing?
I want to say two things. The socio-political condition of Guyana, the bad politics, the racial politics going on there for 60 or more years, was a country ideal for Exxon's exploitation. Exxon found a country ripe for exploitation. Exxon has been known around the world for a lot of years, maybe 40 years, for paying scholars in top universities all over the world to write papers to say fossil fuels do not cause global warming. Now that thing has been exposed. They have been taken to court in several states of the United States. Exxon they are not honest people. Hey, they signed a contract with a leader in Chad, and that leader signed the contract, and then later on it is found out that the leader never read the contract. The same thing happened in Guyana. I want to raise one last thing, 1 minute more or half a minute. A very good letter was written by R.K. Singh, published in the Starbuck News on February 12th. this guy, RK Singh, I don't know who's RK Singh, but he was shocked when he read Routledge's, Alistair Routledge, Guyana's Exxon president, about investor confidence. We spent $30 billion here, gave no context about the $30 billion, but we spent $30 billion here. And now if you ask for renegotiation, you're going to damage investor confidence. It is a lot of baloney. But this guy was outraged. He wrote this. He's quoted Routledge. Routledge's answer in the past about renegotiating the terms of the unnegotiated, extremely lopsided contract that overwhelmingly benefits an American company would be detrimental to investor confidence. He had in the past given a different answer about sanctity of contracts and long-term planning, as though none of those things were changeable. But that is neither here nor there. None of his answers are reasonable. And then he posed this question: how do our leaders, the PNC leader, PPP leader, on either side of the aisle, feel when our people's patrimony and needs can be dismissed in this manner? Do their consciences not prick them even a tiny bit? Can they not this one time join in unison to condemn that statement of Routledge and show that we are a proud nation and not one that will be embarrassed in this manner? Mr. Singh ended his letter with one last thing. He quoted Mahatma Gandhi. He said, as Mahatma Gandhi eloquently put it, the world has enough for everyone's need, but not everyone's greed.
Yeah, that was an excellent letter written by the gentleman, and I really salute him for that letter. Thank you, Mike.
I really would like to make an appeal through this medium to both the leader of the ruling party, whether it's Mr. Jagdeo or Mr. Ali, and Mr. Norton. Please, gentlemen, get together and issue a statement. Condemn that statement of Mr. Routledge, and if you can find the courage, demand renegotiation. You own the oil resource. You have the power. You are a sovereign, independent country. You have the power, and I can promise you, based on my knowledge of international politics, the United States government is not going to collaborate with Exxon to oust any government there. Those things were done since the 1980s when the Church Committee in the Senate opened up all those files, and those things will not happen again. I know a lot of PP supporters wrote that in the blogs and the Cyber News. They are pushing falsehood, propaganda. U.S. government, I repeat, U.S. government will not collaborate with a U.S. company, Exxon, to throw out a government in Guyana because they act courageously to demand renegotiation.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike. Darsh, you have 30 seconds. Mike, took up all your time.
So what I want to say, hey, there is hope, because if you remember a few months ago, civil society had a lawsuit against the radioactive material being brought on shore in Guyana, right? And there have been concerns raised, hey, that radioactive material could seep into the water, etc., that people drink. And civil society won that lawsuit. So we as, citizens of Guyana, we need to stand up. We need to put the pressure, we are the voters, we need to put the pressure on both the current government and the opposition, right? Why is the opposition, all these issues we brought up tonight, why aren't they hammering the current government on those issues?
Well said, Darsh. And again, the people of Guyana seems very complacent. So the only way forward that will help protect us, I believe, is our courts. And we look forward to the court agreeing with Glenn Last's case. And once that case is won, I think Guyana will be transformed, because people will start to look differently at this oil contract. Gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for taking your time to be with us tonight. Our audience, thank you for being with us. to Noir Singh, and of course to Devin. Thank you so much. And guys, Guyanese, my brothers and sisters in Guyana, fellow Guyanese, please wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Thank you so much, and God